Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Shop Talk, hosted by the Triangle Area SQL Server Users Group. So tonight we have a mostly full group. First of all, we have somebody who hasn't been here in a hot minute. How you doing, Tracy?
All right, how are you?
Fantastic. TG says hello. Hello back to you. Another person who haven't seen in a moment. Mike doesn't like the elevator music on his laptop speaker. Yeah, it can get a little intense. Hey Raymond, how you doing? And speaking of hello Mala.
Hello everyone, good evening.
Excellent. Rednello, good to see you. So, couple of announcements. First of all, for this Lincoln and Washington birthday edition, we're actually working today. So, we got that going for us.
I didn't.
All right, most of us, well, you're working right now.
Well, I did work on my apartment, so does that count?
Yeah, that counts.
So I'm moving.
I mean,
that's a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
So Mala has an announcement for the Women in Tech group. And I caught her at just the right time. I should have had a career as a waiter.
That's okay. So, Kathy Kellenberger and me, we are running a virtual user group called Women in Technology User Group, formerly called PASWIT. We were part of PAS, but since PAS folded, we've started our own little group. We don't have the original membership list or anything. We didn't get anything like that from them. So it's started new, totally new. And as part of that, we are planning to have some day-long events. We will have monthly sessions, one speaker, like all chapters do. We are also planning a day-long event, and the first of the day-long events is on March the 5th. And it has 12 women speakers, all of them rock stars at what they're doing. It's 50% tech and 50% other professional growth stuff. So please check it out. Everybody welcome. We really appreciate it. The larger the audience, the more encouragement people are going to get. Thank you.
Yeah, well, speaking of tech sessions, Tracy's doing one of those.
That's me.
On DBA checks?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
I'm supposed to talk. Yes, on DBA checks and DBA tools and configuring your SQL Server, consistently. And for your first time, you booting up your server, get it all set up consistently across your environments, and you got all the code that you can download and all that good fun stuff. It's fun. Everybody seems to like it. I don't know why, but they do.
Consistent deployment of servers is not a bad thing.
I don't know. I do like 12 slides and then I spend like 50 minutes in code, and it's just like, to me, that just seems like, no one will like it, but they do. They're like, more. So.
Good. If you want to check that out, link is in chat. So the next item, by the way, Mike mentions, I'm old enough to remember we used to get 2 President's Days.
We did?
We never did.
Oh.
Yeah, but Mike did.
I think that sounds unfair.
So next, pass content. So Redgate, after buying up pass content, has made a commitment to make as much of it available as they could. And one of the interesting things that they did very early on was that they put all of the Pass Pro information out for free. So Pass Pro was an attempt by Pass to diversify its revenue scheme by having people pay for some additional content. That went over almost exactly as well as you would have expected. It did not have a great life. We did actually talk about it a little bit on a prior episode of Shop Talk, I believe, and I've talked about it in public on a couple of occasions. But anyhow, the content that was made available as part of your Pass Pro membership is now available for free on Redgate in their hub. So you can go check that out. You can see the learning tracks that were available for Pro members. And check it out. Let's see. Mike mentions Tomorrow's data as code. Going to talk about Fourier transforms of an analog signal into a bunch of additive cycles at specific frequencies and amplitudes. No, it's probably not going to be talking about that at all. It will instead be more of my recollection is configuration within a database being stored in source control. So that's a little bit different. Basically, yeah. So let me talk about this. Jeff Nowicki, former coworker of mine, database engineer type, and using source control for things like static and lookup data, job configurations, integration services packages. Basically, a few techniques to make making deployments more consistent and reducing deployments to a single workflow instead of having, well, first you next on the server, then you follow this 20-page document, then you go and try to insert these tables and forget a couple of tables, and then you get a few trouble tickets. But yeah, that's the gist of what tomorrow's SQL Server user group meeting will be like. It won't be about Fourier transforms at all, although that would also be an interesting presentation. Just not what we're talking about. Raymond says, sounds like a job for DBA tools. Yeah, in part. D. Garrison, welcome in.
Multiple ways to do it, yeah.
There are multiple ways, yeah. Code-based deployments and updates, as Mala says, yep. D. Garrison, welcome aboard. Glad to have you here. So speaking of, again, Redgate Pass content, so we talked about Pass Pro content, now available for free. Pass TV, the YouTube channel, has been taken over by Redgate, so it is still available, and they are in the process of uploading the Pass Summit 2019 Learning Pathway videos, and then they've already committed to uploading all of the Pass Virtual Summit 2020 videos. So all of those will be made available to the community. I don't really have anything bad to say about that. I mean, I think, the content was there, and I'm glad that it will be available afterwards. I can understand people who paid for it maybe being a little salty that, well, I paid for this content. So I can understand it from that aspect, but you know what? I paid for Pass Pro, and I don't care. I'm glad that the material is going to be available, that it will live on.
Right.
Anders says, cynical Anders, buying goodwill. Normal Anders, yay. I mean, yeah, sure. I'd rather they buy goodwill, though, so we got that going for us. And Mala, you're saying they did a great job with their commitment of releasing it for free.
Yeah, they promised that, and some of us were skeptical if it's going to be 100% free or there's going to be any kind of tags attached. But honestly, yeah, they seem to have done good.
Yep, TG says for a brief moment they had marketing videos uploaded as well, but removed them after a lot of people asked, what? That's pretty funny. I'm guessing all the videos were just there in the same blob storage account. They're like, okay, let's just upload all these videos. And yeah. This is the benefit of being run by someone that does not live and die from the revenue from it. Yes.
Possibly. Yeah.
Oh, Redgate marketing. Oh. Yeah. I'm okay with Redgate marketing hey, this is the Redgate hub, and you're getting Redgate content from the Redgate hub. But right, on the Pass TV channel, that's a little on the nose. But at least they removed them. And Mike says, gets back to the concept of patrons and classical patronage. Yeah, that whole idea, it had its values. We got some nice things out of it.
Well, it's going to be, to my mind, it's going to be 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. It's not going to be one way. I mean, you're going to see some Redgate marketing with a lot of events that are going to be pushed by Redgate. That's without a doubt. I mean, it's a commercial, for-profit company. They only bought the name, the brand name. They didn't buy the concept of pass or anything like that. So we're going to see that, but they have a good track record of doing good things with community. So let's see what comes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Now, it will make things interesting when, say, SQL Saturday comes back. By the way, the SQL Saturday website, actually, that domain resolves to a website. There's nothing exciting on it yet, but it does actually resolve to something now, so...
Well, we lost the whole infrastructure, and, from what I understood, from what Steve said, is that there's no database behind it. There's no data, and everything is wiped. All that is gone. They have to build it back up from scratch, yeah.
Yeah, as part of the sale, there was no information given. Pass, for example, doesn't have... They didn't have the right to give any information out. So basically, you got the recorded content where you did have waivers. As speakers for Pass, we did sign waivers for this. So they could transfer that, but they couldn't transfer, say, lists for groups.
No, we lost for the WIT group. We lost 5,000 people on our list. So it's quite loss, significant loss.
The DEI group only has 21 people if people want to join it. The diversity, equity, and inclusion group that I'm trying to run.
It'll
we only
take
have
a while.
21.
Yeah. It'll take a while for some of the groups to build back up. Part of it is just because you joined a group doesn't mean you're active in a group. Like TriPass has 1,500 members. I can count on some number of hands the number of really active members, and on some number more hands the number of reasonably active members. Neither of those numbers approaches 1,500.
Can I say, do you get to 100?
No.
I think you might get to 100 at the most.
Get to 100 active users and probably like 300, 400 quasi-active users.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
But
people coming in and out, so.
Yeah, and that I don't think that's strange. I think you find any organization large enough and you'll see maybe 5 to 10% will be really active people. So when you burn that list, some of those people, you want them to find the new list and say, hey, come on over here. And a lot of the people, either that was an old email account, or they've moved out of the area, or they're just no longer interested in the thing. You're going to have, like Andrew says, you'll have some bloat. With anyone going to a SQL Saturday being automatically a member of Pass, there is bound to be a bit of bloat. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and but you weren't automatically put in virtual groups if you were a member of those SQL Saturdays, so.
True, you weren't a member of a virtual group, but you were a member of Pass.
Yeah, definitely.
Right.
Mike jokes that 25% of them are recruiters. So, and, of those, 80% of those people probably ended up with new jobs in the meantime. So
that's very true. We do have a lot of recruiters on there.
Yeah. Andrew says, I had 4 different accounts with Pass just due to going to Summit with 3 different companies. Yeah.
That's true. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I had 3 accounts at least with Pass.
Nope, I always set it up under my Gmail account.
Yeah. So Solomon had a good
work to have my information.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Solomon had a good take I wanted to get to here. Redgate doesn't know anybody anything regarding this content. They didn't have to buy it, so even if they included advertising, whatever. People who paid previously have nothing to complain about. People who didn't pay, or those people didn't pay Redgate, and if they found value in what they paid for before, no harm really done. That's fair. No, that is a fair point.
That is a fair point, yeah.
And to the extent that Pass as an organization is gone, and that this is not Redgate resurrecting Pass, and you say this is Redgate providing a service, I'm fully with you.
Right.
to the extent that this is Redgate resurrecting Pass, trying to bring it back as a new organization, I think it is better in the long run to try to have that be as vendor neutral as possible, even if it comes at a small hit to your organization, being Redgate. Because if it's Redgate's Pass, then competitors to Redgate might not feel that inclined to pony up a bunch of cash to put on a conference or to ensure the longevity of the organization. So, at that point, if we're talking about the end goal being an organization, a technical organization that is intended to survive a company, then I'd prefer it be vendor neutral. If we're just talking about Redgate doing a good deed and making available this content that they've bought so that the community can have it, then sure, put marketing labels on that. Put some, make it clear. Yes, we did this. It was our stuff. And by the way, here's where you can get our products. So I get where you're going. Mike mentions there's a big connection between patronage and the storytelling related to copyrights. Don't get me started on copyrights.
Yeah, let's not talk about it.
We have 43 minutes left in this show. I will spend 40 minutes of it ranting about copyright if you let me. Don't let me. So if we... Okay. So... Next topic. All right, we are at the exciting part of the show. We got a viewer email asking about an issue with Always Encrypted, and I'm going to use some advanced processing techniques and attempt to show this without accidentally doxing myself or messing up the stream. Let's try this out. So we're gonna do that screen. There we are. Look at that. Look at that. First try, every try. Okay, so because I didn't tell you that there would be intense reading, I will give a summarization. Basically, there's a problem with Always Encrypted, SQL Server 2016. Essentially, the person started out with a table that was using randomized encryption, and then wanted to switch a column from randomized to deterministic. And the reason being that queries before essentially was just retrieve data. Now they want to be able to group by the column, the title column. And as a result, well, you can't group by with randomized encryption. Every version, every variant of a string will have its own different encrypted value. Versus deterministic, where if I have a string like cat will always encrypt to some value. So it'll encrypt to some ciphertext consistently, versus randomized encryption, which has some additional bit of information, so that the first time I encrypt cat, it will be one thing. The second time I encrypt cat, it will be something else. Third time I encrypt cat, yet another thing. And if you want to group data, you can group on deterministic values, because just because the term isn't cat anymore, you can still aggregate it because it's always the same thing. It's some representation of cat. So, wanted to make changes in the application based off of this. And what the person did was switch the encryption type for this column from randomized to plain text, and then change it from plain text to deterministic. And the wizard made it look like that's just a dandy thing to do. Index is rebuilt, no problems. But there were some people getting some issues. And the error is actually kind of interesting because you can see. So I'm gonna use my patent pending intense tools for advanced analysis. There we go. I paid a lot of money for these advanced tools for advanced analysis. You see this as, okay, encryption type randomized, encryption type deterministic. So you were trying to call something expecting randomized, you got something with deterministic. But that's not the only thing in here. The other thing in here is actually the data type. So let's use that color. In varchar 10, in varchar max. One thing with always encrypted is that data types have to be exactly correct, and that includes data lengths. So if you have in varchar 10 and in varchar max, always encrypted's driver, the .NET driver will complain. The SQL Server database engine will complain. Everything will complain that this has to be the same data type. So let's go on a little bit further in here. Error randomly appeared through the week, and basically noticed as well that when you encrypt a column, then change the collation to Latin 1 general binary 2, which that is true. This is, if you're using randomized encryption, then your collation is going to be Latin 1 general bind 2. And like the reader mentions, you change it back to plain text, it will not change the collation back. So it will remain Latin 1 general binary 2. It is a case-sensitive collation. It's a binary collation. So technically, if you want to argue binary is different from case-sensitive, Solomon may have that 2,000-page argument ready to go. I will acquiesce to that. But nonetheless, change it back to plain text. It will not change you back to your collation default. And so the reader thought that might be the problem. I don't think that's the problem. But here's what happened. Create a new column. Change title to plain text. So, okay, good with that so far. Copy plain text from title to title 2. Verify the collation of title 2 is the default. Delete title. Encrypt title 2 as deterministic. Rename title 2 to title. And then call refresh parameter encryption to refresh the stored procedure parameters. And then try to rebuild indexes after that, and ended up with a DBCC error on reindexing or rebuild. Now, what's weird is one person gets an error, but apparently nobody else is getting this error. And rebuilding the index returns an error. And there's similar errors, but a couple of minor differences. One is what we've already noted, that we have the incoming expectation in varchar 10 with encryption type randomized, with the expected in varchar max deterministic. So this is leading me to think that maybe in this code path there's something weird going on where the .NET code perhaps is specifying that it's 10 bytes long, or specifying that it's randomized, or something got stuck somewhere, or maybe some piece of the puzzle is just not set up quite right. The other half of it, when trying to rebuild indexes, in varchar max encrypted deterministic, so that's what it looks like on the table. Incompatible with varchar. Now that's kind of interesting, because that's indicating that index rebuild is expecting a different data type altogether. So somewhere the column is still associated as randomized or not at all. I think in this case, based on my reading of this, it's the calling code that might be expecting in varchar 10 and randomized. So there was an example of building this thing out. So you have like the title column, which is specified as in varchar max, and it is specified as deterministic. So all that stuff is looking okay. But getting to the weird scenario of, well, when I try to call this thing, some people get an error. And the fact that some people are getting an error kind of makes me feel like, I wonder if there's a separate path. I wonder if there's some special case for that user where they're doing something a little differently than everybody else and ends up hitting a piece of code that hasn't been updated yet, or ends up hitting a procedure that hasn't been updated yet. So with that in mind, we did reach out to always encrypted expert Tom Norman, who would have been on this show, but he bailed on us. And so Tom and I had a bit of discussion, and here's our quick recommendation. It's a quick recommendation. It's not an ideal recommendation, but work with me here. First, all right, change everything back to plain text. By the way, ideally do this during a downtime window, because there will be some shifts. And if people in chat have ideas as well, call them out, please. But change everything back to plain text. Then take that data, select it into some backup table. So that thing was called dbo.case. So maybe like case backup. Select star into case backup. That way you have all of the data decrypted in plain text. No tie-ins with anything else. Then drop the current table, drop any procedures that call that table. So drop everything around it. Create the new table. So new table will be in plain text to start, or actually, sorry, create the table with that script where you've got these things are randomized, these are deterministic, these things are randomized. Reload the data. So that new table is completely different from the old table. Create the procedures again. That way you don't have to worry about procedure parameters and any issues around expecting randomized versus deterministic. So essentially create a brand new table and not try to mess with switching from one type to the other type. From what the reader, so emailer had mentioned, you know, they went looking for information, trying to figure out how you would do this, and hit a brick wall. I hit that same brick wall. There's not that much information on making changes once a thing is in place, switching from deterministic to randomized or vice versa. So it kind of seems like the best answer would be create a new table, essentially start the process over. The .NET code, this is my second recommendation. Probably my first recommendation. Second one is rebuild the table. First one is check that .NET code. Make sure that everything in there is in fact correct. If there is some extra case, maybe there's some edge case, maybe this person is hitting a different code path than other people, it might be that there's some piece of .NET code that passed in 10 bytes as the length, or 10 characters as the length, and that can cause a problem. That could cause the first problem that you see with the user, because that's looking like something somewhere saying that the title column should be 10 in varchar 10, when you've got it defined in the table as in varchar max. So That feels like that's somewhere either in the code or in a stored procedure. That's just maybe off a column or something. So Raymond asks, how much data are we talking about? And was the encryption completed? Because it takes time to re-encrypt. Yeah, so that is a good question. If we're talking about, and I kind of made the assumption that we were going to talk about thousands to hundreds of thousands of rows, where loading this data again is probably 20, 30 seconds max. If we start talking hundreds of billions of rows, then yeah, 5,500 rows. Oh yeah, I wouldn't even blink twice about recreating. So the character string is varying depending on the length entered. That may be a little interesting, because the information that, everything that I've seen, everything that I've worked with Always Encrypted, you have to specify the data length, and those data lengths have to match up. So the application has to have a matching data length with what the database is saying, or else it runs into trouble. So if I have in varchar 100 and I try to say in varchar 70, it'll actually give me that collision error that we saw. So it would give that error message that reads essentially operand type clash, but it would say in varchar 100, blah, 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 and in varchar 70. Yeah, Solomon, I knew that you were gonna get on my case real bad if I left my off the cuff statement of, well, binary includes case sensitivity, and didn't say that there was going to be a lot of nuance in there that I wasn't going to get into, because I probably would get it wrong because I'm speaking off the cuff. Hey, welcome back, Mala. You're still on mute though.
Thank you.
So Red Nello says this was their question, and give it a try rebuilding it. Also, collation shouldn't affect the data itself in varchar, as it doesn't change the encoding. In varchar is always UTF-16. That's, yes, in general, completely agree with you. Now, for always encrypted, the collation has to be specified. But that's...
And it does change if you change the encryption, right, Kevin?
Well, if you go from, randomized encryption, always encrypted, has to be the binary collation.
Yep.
The specific binary collation of Latin 1 general bind 2. Deterministic encryption, I believe, doesn't have to.
Yeah, there's only one of them that has to.
Yeah, I think it's just randomized. Solomon says, I assume...
That's what
ahead,
Mladen said too. No, I said that's what Mladen said too in his video.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that does sound right. So yeah. Solomon says, I assume the change to binary collation is to make things easier for the developers and users, as it sets expectations that it's a simple character-to-character comparison. I could believe that, yeah. In an ideal world, all of these data types would be var binary at this point, but for always encrypted, they wanted to make it as simplistic as possible, and as a result, you could start with a varchar and varchar column and still end up with encryption. So, wonder if the data type is used as a salt for the randomization. I don't know that it would be. I mean, obviously I can't tell you yes or no. It would be curious if it were. But Anders is on the right path, SQL variant everywhere. See, if we just use SQL variant for everything, then we wouldn't have to worry about data types at all. So, good on you, Anders. By the way, never let me near any of your databases. I will drop them. Of course, knowing Anders, he would drop them too. So yeah, that was very interesting problem, Rednello. Hopefully we give you enough information. I guess a test would be to try to change nvarchar 10 to nvarchar 50. So the table itself is defined as nvarchar max. But the error message is indicating somewhere in there something is calling it with nvarchar 10. Previous DBA dropped the entire server.
How do you drop a server? Is that a virtual server and you just go and go click?
I hope so. And
I think
hate
he
to see
means
you drop a
uninstalled SQL or something like that.
yep, that's what Anders just said. Yeah, uninstalled it.
Yeah.
Uninstalled SQL
Yeah.
Server.
When I hear drop and I'm just like, I'm gonna delete the VM.
That's
F disk
possible
with
too.
wrath.
That is
possible too.
possible. Yeah.
Yeah, very possible. I had a colleague who did that once.
I've had people delete the whole AD.
He asked for rights to the VMware thing, and just for monitoring. And after a lot of hassle, we got it. And the first thing he did was to go in there and drop the VM.
This is why we can't have nice things, people. Don't delete stuff the first time you get to touch it. Wait a little bit. Wait until they least expect it, then delete it. That way you get the biggest effect. It's the reason I have this job. That's a fair point. Raymond says that's what backups are for. Yep, that is one good reason to have backups. And also to test them out, because just having backups, maybe they work. Enhanced QC, I asked the instructor at Fort Gordon what would happen to the Solaris box if I RMRF star as root. He said, try it out. I mean, there is some value in learning the hard way. It literally melted. So the best part about RMRF slash or star, if you're in the root directory, is that things that are loaded in memory will still run. So it can take a little while for somebody to realize that there's a problem. You'll start seeing some weird errors. Things are missing. Why is LS missing? Why is CP missing? But applications that are running in memory will still successfully continue to run as long as they don't need to hit disk. So it could be minutes to hours before you realize that you've royally messed up. On the plus side, if something royally messes up, there is a chance that you might be able to recover to a new server in time to basically hobble along until you get that new server up, switch everybody over, and have a limited number of people recognize just how borked the whole thing was. So, that's not exactly an event that I want to live through, but it's something that's possible. That's more of security consulting. See what you can get away with. Just make sure you have that waiver and that little get out of jail free card written by the CTO and the CIO. Just to make sure you get all that paperwork in place before you start doing it. TG says, once removed the C drive from a Windows server by accident. It kept running until we shut it down the next planned dountime. Yeah, as long as you're not hitting disk.
Because it's in memory. Yeah, cool.
Yep.
You didn't hit any DLLs off the disk. Cool.
Yep. And if all your data stored on other drives and you're not using C as a swap or anything, once the operating system's up, SQL is installed on a different disk. Yeah. So again, not stuff you want to do.
What else can we do to the servers? This sounds fun.
Let's see. Don't you love asking yourself, what are those TTL settings again? Can we lower them when we swap? Yeah.
Yeah.
Next thing that I want to talk about. Failure is a good teacher. I mean, that's a good life lesson, yes. Example is the school of mankind, and man shall learn it no other. Powered
Before
BI.
you go work with TJ.
Power BI dashboard and day presentations. So here's a link, Microsoft Events. There are dashboard and day presentations going on. If you're interested in learning about Power BI, you've never done anything with it before, this is a really good one-day training. It's like 4 to 6 hours usually, where you'll get started with Power BI. It'll give you a high enough level overview of here's what's available, here's what's possible. Although a buddy of mine has for years had this idea of Power BI day 2, which I told him he should do it like 28 days later. So if ever you see a zombie related Power BI session, know that I played a small role in this. But the idea here is, okay, you're new to Power BI. What types of functionality is available? What types of things can you do with this? It doesn't so much go into the deployment, the management, the source control work, the more advanced Power Query work, the more advanced DAX work, but at least it gives you an idea of here's the types of visuals you can include, here's how you can work with Power Query, here are some of the built-in functionality that's available in the UI, and that you can go further.
So would they explain, Kevin, like what kind of chart is appropriate for what kind of data or problem, that kind of stuff? Do they go into that?
My recollection is no, but
Okay.
a lot of that will depend on who's doing the presenting and if it's live. Because if it's pre-recorded, which this might be, I'm not sure. If it's pre-recorded, then obviously it's whatever content they've come up with. And usually they don't go into much of visualization design or visualization principles. That you can dive into pretty deeply and get some good information. There are, like, I could throw at you a few books that would be good ideas, but this is more of here's how you can do it, because like I mentioned, they'll have probably about 4 hours to do this, and you can spend 4 hours on an intro to Power BI without getting into any detail on most any topic, just by working out, building out tables, basics of Power Query, building out relationships, basics of dragging visuals on, filtering, formatting, processing, slicing, building out different dashboard tabs, building out reports, and then pushing it out to Power BI and working with streaming. That is 4 hours right there.
Fair enough. And this is free, I think. I think I posted this on the work Slack today.
Yep, that's where I grabbed it from.
All right.
So yes, those are free events. They're in different time zones. If you're interested, if you are new to Power BI and want to pick up a little bit about it, go check that out. It is a good showcase of the types of things that you can do with Power BI. You're not going to walk out of it an expert on it, and you're not going to be able to, say, take it into your own work environment and have your stuff done in a day, but you will at least have an understanding of what is available in the market. So Enhanced QC says, I work in the MSP world, always take whatever the text says, multiply by 3. 4 hours now becomes 12. Yeah. Though this is technical training as opposed to turning your data into something valuable. When it comes to that, definitely multiply by 3. because you will have so many missing requirements. You'll find out that the data, which is totally pristine, is actually a flaming dumpster fire of garbage. And by the way, nobody can agree on what a metric is. Like, you'll ask four different groups, what is a customer? Oh, well, this is a customer. No, this is a customer. No, this is a customer. Basically, welcome to data warehousing over the past 3 decades. And because data warehousing projects failed, the answer is self-service BI, where everybody gets to build a data warehouse that fails.
Everything fails tonight. What's up with that?
Well, this is I
Theme of
am
the show.
I am not. It kind of is the theme of the show, yeah.
Yeah, I think it is.
Failure is more interesting. So, I'm also not the biggest fan in the world of.
Best line on self-service BI I've ever heard, Kevin. I love it.
Yeah, I am so far away from being sold on self-service BI that I will go full cynical Anders. To fail or error is human. To really mess up, you need VMware. Yep. You just there are a lot of things you could replace that last noun with, and you'll get it. It'll work. Or Hyper-V. Yeah. But yeah, as far as self-service BI goes, here's my hot take. Self-service BI is an interesting idea that is fraught with the most perfect storm of failure. You are giving, like Mike mentions, people who can risk pulling data incorrectly. Yeah, you're essentially giving free reign to find out what everything will look like to people who don't know how to optimize it, probably don't understand the data model effectively, and are going to almost inevitably cause performance issues, create incorrect understandings of the data, and end up forcing more work back on enterprise IT than just going about it the original way. If you do self-service BI from OLTP, you are already failing. Yeah, definitely. I think to the extent that I think self-service BI can work, it is after you have a very strong enterprise IT model in place, that you have that Kimball-style data warehouse, that you have conformed dimensions, that you have general agreement across the business units of what everything means, how everything works. Then you can say to the analysts, okay, here is a model that I have built for you in analysis services, and have fun with it because I have created the measures, I have created the dimensions, we have agreement on what those dimensions mean, we have agreement on what those measures mean, and if you create your own measure off of that does not agree with these, that's your own fault, not mine. So TG says, but it's so great that you can just not apply that filter and double the revenue. Yep. It's like, oh, I missed that one little thing, and now look at that. The company made $28 billion this year. Oh, because I cross-joined that table. I mean, that's how it works, right? The pictures are so pretty. And Enhanced QC says that this is all billable. I mean, yeah. If you're a consultant coming into this, at least you get paid. But yeah, self-service. And I'll admit, I'm being a little more cynical than maybe I should be. But the number of organizations I've worked at that could really handle self-service business intelligence is 0. There are people within organizations that I would trust to build out reports, to use models that exist, but only off of things that have been built painstakingly by IT people. I would absolutely not trust somebody slapping together a Power BI dashboard that pulls data from 6 different sources, tries to integrate them all together, and say, okay, have fun with this, because things will change. Those data sources will break, the reports will break, and then you have these reports like, oh, well, the CEO uses this report every Monday and it's broken. IT, go fix this right now. We need it by 7 a.m. Andrew says, even for normal reporting, I found a report that had been wrong for 12 years when I went in to modify it. It happens. It happens. People don't thoroughly check the reports. I've done that before. You've messed up the calculations because you use the same calculation in a dozen different reports. That stuff happens. Tell them to buy Cognos and hit the IBM Easy button. That is my official response. Let's see. And by the way, yeah, this is not me ragging on Power BI. I like Power BI a lot. I'm not ragging on Tableau. I like Tableau a lot. I'm not ragging on Click. Click exists as a thing.
I was getting ready to say, if he says he likes that a lot, he just likes everything.
One place I worked for paid for Tableau licenses for all their customers. Wow, Mala, so that sales rep must have gotten a nice yacht out of it. Mike says, we have self-service plus. You meet thresholds and training requirements. SQL test, written agreement of your use case, Epic certifications, like a driver's license.
Well, customers all like to make pretty things that meant nothing. In the end, they did all kinds of cool stuff with Tableau, but nobody actually derived any value out of it. Some of them, I think, even used that license to do some stuff for themselves. That's it. Because that's not cheap.
No, it's not. No, it's not. And I like Mike's idea of self-service plus. That, hey, I have vetted you, that you are knowledgeable enough in your domain and have done enough in this space that we can trust that you won't break things horribly. That's fair. Also you segregate things out as much as possible, like having that analysis services server or having that enterprise data warehouse and those data marts, and having those data sets that are distinct from the transactional system that you don't want to take down, because that's where the real money is. Let's see. Seriously, there are a couple of approaches to this. Rob Colley and the Singh book on Power BI and Power Pivot, which is dated, is pretty good. There are some good YouTube videos by Singh online. Yeah, friend of mine, Eugene Meidinger, has quite a bit of training. He's got a book on DAX. Phil Seamark has a book on DAX. There's some good training. And if you are a person who is not in the enterprise IT world, although I am pretty consistently ragging on most of those people, if you are in that space, that's not to say don't try to do anything, because you still have to do your jobs. And I get the other side of it, that enterprise IT is so slow, they never get anything done. You give them a report, they take 6 months to get back to you, and they send a junior person who tries to read what your requirements look like and doesn't understand them, and then they give you something that looks nothing like what you expected. So I understand the opposite side of that. It is a conundrum. But basically, self-service works best when it's the illusion of self-service. Self-service works best when you have somebody who has essentially created a guided walled garden in which you work. And to the extent that your environment is Wild West, I think self-service falls apart real fast. And I think everybody's environment is Wild West. Not literally everybody, but enough so that it is hard for most companies to get in that space and be successful. It is easy to find some value in Power BI or in Tableau. You can find a lot of value real fast, but so much of it depends on having solid data modeling up front, having, like Raymond says, OKRs correctly defined, having KPIs, having data marts, having those hard discussions about what things mean, how calculations work, what the measures look like. But at that point, you're back to Kimball-style data warehousing. And Power BI is essentially a way to visualize that. And if what we're saying self-service BI is essentially finding nice ways to visualize Kimball-style data warehouses, I think that's useful. But it's, I don't know, it's a little weird. It's funny how a lot of this data stuff comes back to old school engineering. There is nothing new under the sun, Anders. We have wild new principles that are essentially what people were coming up with 30, 40, 50 years ago. I mean, I joke that the cloud is today's mainframe. And so many of the principles end up being, well, this is how we did it in mainframes, and then we went to decentralized desktops and decentralized servers, and then we essentially went back to mainframes. Reynardi's book on data warehouses is a good book on the topic. All right, that one's new to me. I am not familiar with the name Reynardi. So I'll have to check that out. Thanks, Raymond. So, another A-Press book. Okay. All right, that's fair. Cloud outsourcing. I'm going to have to think about that one a little bit, TG. I'm going to have to think about that.
What does he mean by cloud outsourcing, Thomas? What do you mean, sir?
Good question. Cloud is a marketing term for somebody else's computer. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Like that. Okay.
Cloud equals outsourcing. Oh, okay. You're outsourcing your hardware.
Okay, got it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, see, I thought you meant outsourcing people. That there was some metaphor or equivalency, as opposed to you're outsourcing your hardware. I guess you're outsourcing your sysops as well, a little bit. So Ralph Kimball, ETL book, is that good or bad? The ETL book, mediocre. So Data Warehouse Toolkit, the original one, outstanding book. Get it, read it a third time. It'll make more sense the third time. Data Warehouse ETL Toolkit, some of the other books in the series are much more hit or miss. I don't think I would pay full price for any of the others. There's even a Microsoft Data Warehouse Toolkit that was written by somebody else. Not worth it. I would definitely buy the original. Have the original, have a good version of it, and go back and read it literally 2-3 times. Because first time you read it, you'll probably get about 40% of the way through, and then it's going to start getting a little esoteric. Implement, go back, read it again, realize how many things you did wrong the first time. Then you get further, like 70%, 80%, when you say, wait, this doesn't sound like it's right at all. Implement some more. You go back, you read it a third time. You say, oh, that's what I was doing wrong the whole time. So, yeah, Data Warehouse ETL Toolkit, not a huge fan of it. It's not a terrible book, but I just don't think that it's worth the money. I would spend all of the money on the first book. I wouldn't even pay for the other books. Check it out at a library if you want, but I don't think I would pay to have a copy of it.
So Stacia Meissner taught Kimball's data modeling on Pluralsight some time ago, and this has been a really long time. I have to look if her course is still around, it maybe. But she did an excellent job teaching some of it on Pluralsight. So if you're not the kind to read through 3 volumes of books. Me, I read through it and I will forget where I started if I go into something that deep. So
Yeah.
that is an alternate if anybody wants it. I would guess that it's still around on Pluralsight. I haven't checked yet.
Yeah, and Stacya's a good presenter. I have not seen her training, but I don't imagine that. I imagine it is very good. So on the first one, I will look, get them on thrift books for cheap. Yeah. By the way, book pro tip. Check out a website called isbn.new. And right there, if you know the ISBN of a book, that's best. But even if you don't, you can search by words, you can search by titles, authors, and that will also look up a bunch of different places where you can buy it. So they'll look for used bookstores, new bookstores, and different marketplaces where you could possibly get the book. So Thrift Books is good. Abe Books is good. There are a lot of different used and new booksellers, small, large, and you don't just have to buy it from Amazon. So I've been using that website since I worked at a bookstore in 2004, and that website was up in 2004. So it's been around for a minute. So, all right, we have hit the top of the hour. That means it's time for Shop Talk to turn into a pumpkin and disappear. Some of the books may be online in libraries as well. Yeah. So if you're in the Triangle area, Durham's library and Raleigh's library both allow for online checkout of ebooks. So if you have a library card in Raleigh or Durham, you can do that. I know several other cities will allow that as well. But I know in the Triangle area, you can do ebook checkouts. So you might have luck doing that. Anyhow, we're at the top of the hour. Time for us to say thank you so much. And we'll see you tomorrow for Jeff talking about database data in code in source control. And then Shop Talk again in 2 weeks. So we'll see you then.